Bhagavad-gītā, Sri Krishna's Illuminations on the Perfection of Yoga, with commentary by Swami B.G Narasingha. Read by Gaurava Das. Preface. The sublime message of Bhagavad-gita is timeless and is applicable in every facet of life. Within the Bhagavad-gita are the answers to the mysteries of existence, our real purpose in this world, how we should act and why we suffer, or are oftentimes helpless in our struggle for survival. To understand the Bhagavad-gita, one must enter into the spirit of the Gita by accepting the path of devotion, or Bhakti. Accordingly, the Gita's message cannot be properly understood by mental speculation. To this end, the sublime process illuminated within the Gita must be accepted as given by the speaker himself, Sri Krishna. The active principle of understanding the message of the Gita is to hear directly from the master of yoga, Sri Krishna, who is glorified throughout the Vedic literature as the Supreme Person, the Absolute Truth. Sri Krishna speaks to Arjuna in Bhagavad-gita, and thus one who studies the Gita hears from Krishna directly. The philosophy of Bhagavad-gita is clear for the sincere reader. Yet for some, approaching the Gita may seem daunting, its language too ancient. However, this obstacle is easily overcome by a straightforward translation and commentary, Anuvrtti. The requirement for a translation and commentary on the Gita is as necessary today as any time in the past. With the passing of time, our values and our worldview are constantly changing, and this demands a fresh approach to the understanding of the Gita. This translation and commentary on the Bhagavad-gita provides simple yet profound knowledge to elevate us to a higher state of consciousness, whereby we can realize our true self and progress towards attaining a life of spiritual fulfillment. Self-realization means to realize our actual purpose in life and act towards it, gradually freeing us from the yoke of material bondage. Where there is light, darkness cannot stand. Where there is proper knowledge, ignorance cannot remain. The Bhagavad-gita unravels the mysteries of life, providing not only knowledgeable answers, but also a progressive process to uplift us to pure consciousness. One of the more remarkable features of the Gita is that its readers can easily observe and feel its philosophy working, like poetry in motion in their everyday lives. The knowledge of Bhagavad-gita is a true science, its formulas for success clear and observable in action. The Bhagavad-gita thus provides a complete outline for self-realization in everyday life. Anyone who is fortunate enough to dive deeply into the wisdom of the Bhagavad-gita and embrace its message will surely achieve success, for this is guaranteed in the Gita's final verse. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara, Tatra Shri Vijayo Bhutir, Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. Where there is Sri Krishna, the master of yoga, and where there is Arjuna, the mighty archer, there will always be prosperity, victory, opulence, and righteousness. This is my firm conviction. Swami B.G Vishnu. Introduction. Bhagavad-gita is the oldest and most widely read book of theistic science in the world today. Also known as the Gita-upanishad, the Bhagavad-gita has been the principal handbook of yoga for more than 5,000 years. In contrast to many mundane literatures of the present day, the Bhagavad-gita is free from mental speculation and is complete in knowledge of the eternal self, or the Atma, the process of bhakti yoga, and the nature and identity of the Absolute Truth, Sri Krishna. As such, the Bhagavad-gita is the single most important book in the world, surpassing all others in wisdom and enlightenment. The first word of Bhagavad-gita is dharma. Sometimes dharma is mistaken to mean religion or a particular belief, but it is not so. Dharma means the quintessential duty or knowledge that elevates our consciousness to a direct connection with the Absolute Truth. This is also known as Sanatan Dharma, the occupational duty of all living beings. The Bhagavad-gita begins with the word dharma. Thus we can understand from the outset that the Bhagavad-gita is not about dogma or a sectarian way of thinking. Indeed, Bhagavad-gītā is the complete science of realizing the absolute truth. For an observant person, it is clear that the world around us is a bewildering place with many unsolved mysteries. If one is seeking answers to the age-old questions of who am I, why do we suffer, where do we come from, what is the purpose of life, what happens after death, then one will find great satisfaction in the Bhagavad-gītā, because the Gita answers these questions and more with the utmost clarity. As a young seeker of truth, I first came in contact with the Bhagavad-gītā in 1968. In subsequent years, I traveled to India and studied Bhagavad-gītā under the foremost gurus of the late 20th century, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and Swami B.G Sridhar Goswami. By the goodwill of these two great masters, the essential message of Bhagavad-gītā entered my heart, and I was soon to be situated on the path of self-realization. As with any path in life, one will certainly encounter crossroads. The first crossroad that I came to while studying the Bhagavad-gītā was to decide on the path, personal or impersonal. Was I to follow the path of personalism, to perfect the individual self, to enter into the spiritual sky of Vaikuntha planets and live eternally with the Supreme Person Sri Krishna? Or was I to follow the path of impersonalism, ending existence as an individual living being and merging myself into the Brahma-jyoti of infinite bliss? I chose the former, personalism, Bhakti Yoga. Bhagavad-gītā is specifically meant for those following the path of Bhakti Yoga. Many impersonal philosophers have tried to lay claim to the Gita over the years, at times even claiming to be Sri Krishna, a claim that is exposed by the simple fact that they do not understand the message of Sri Krishna in Bhagavad-gītā, despite its profound clarity. Sri Krishna is the original speaker of Bhagavad-gītā. Therefore, he must know the message of the Gita better than anyone. And Krishna says in the 18th chapter that the message of the Gita is exclusively meant for those who are aspiring to know the absolute truth on the path of Bhakti Yoga. Bhagavad-gītā is certainly a scholarly work, but one need not be a scholar to understand the Gita's straightforward and simple message. Indeed, Arjuna, the first student of Bhagavad-gītā, was not a scholar, but a warrior. In the past, many great scholars, gurus, and self-realized masters have written illuminating commentaries to accompany the Gita, its as-it-is meaning, its poetry, philosophy, and its hidden treasure, so that the people of their time, as well as the people of future generations, may have a better appreciation of the message of Sri Krishna. We have now completed the first decade of the 21st century, and a host of such erudite commentaries on the Bhagavad-gītā sit upon our bookshelves and in our libraries. Surely, there is no call for yet another. The message of Bhagavad-gītā is eternal and unchanging, but the time that surrounds us is always changing. Thus, our perception of life, our current situation, and our necessity is also always changing. To meet the changing times and the present necessity, yet another commentary is being presented, a brief commentary, or Anuvrtti. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti, a renowned commentator on the Bhagavad-gītā from antiquity, the first 6 chapters of the Gita mainly pertain to karma, the second 6 chapters to bhakti, and the final 6 chapters to jnana. But the answers to life's most puzzling questions are found throughout the 18 chapters of the Gita, with Sri Krishna's last and conclusive instruction to Arjuna in verse 66 of the last chapter, Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. In our Anuvrtti, we have not commented on each and every verse spoken by Sri Krishna, as we feel that by directly hearing from Krishna with one's intelligence, one receives the greatest knowledge, and further comment is not always necessary. The comments made in the Anuvrtti are to highlight certain points and to reflect on what Krishna says with relevance to our world today. What lies ahead in our Anuvrtti are the basics of Gaudiya Vaiṣṇava Philosophy, Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, and the essential understanding for the practice of Bhakti Yoga. Many readers may want to delve deeper into the knowledge of Bhagavad-gītā, and for such persons we highly recommend the study of the 1973 Macmillan edition of Bhagavad-gita As It Is by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Other recommended readings are the commentaries of Vishwanath Chakravarti, Baladev Vidyabhushan, Bhaktivinoda Thakura, and Swami B.R. Sridhardev Goswami. We would like to express our sincere appreciation for those who have encouraged us in our work and helped to bring Bhagavad-gita, Sri Krishna's Illuminations on the Perfection of Yoga, to completion. We especially want to mention here our godbrothers, Swami Bhakti Bhavana Vishnu, Jayadev, Jagadishwar, our godsister Dhira Lalita, and our sannyasi disciples, Swami Bhakti Vigyan Giri and Haridas Babaji Maharaj. May this publication be an offering unto the Absolute Truth, Sri Krishna. Krishnarpanamastu, Swami B.G. Narasingha. August 22nd, 2011. Sri Krishna Janmastami, Gaurabda, 526. The History of the Gita. Since time immemorial, the Bhagavad-gita has been a prime source of inspiration for many great thinkers and philosophers in both the East and the West. In ancient times, the first commentary on the Gita was written by Adi Shankara, who was the first acharya to treat it as a freestanding text. Subsequently, other great acharyas such as Ramanuja, Madhva, Sridhar Swami, and others wrote commentaries on the Gita that presented its essential devotional significance in stark contrast to Adi Shankara's impersonal interpretation. In the Western world, the Bhagavad-gita has been highly appreciated by erudite scholars and philosophers, such as Henry David Thoreau, Friedrich Schlegel, Arthur Schopenhauer, Carl Jung, and Hermann Hesse. Upon reading the Gita, the famous American transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson commented, "I owed a magnificent day to the Bhagavad-gita. It was the first of books. It was as if an empire spoke to us. Nothing small or unworthy, but large, serene, consistent, the voice of an old intelligence, which in another age and climate had pondered and thus disposed of the same questions which exercise us." From the Journals of Ralph Waldo Emerson. Originally, the Bhagavad-gita is part of the ancient historical epic, the Mahabharata, composed by the great sage Vyasa in approximately 3100 BCE. The 18 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita are found within the 6th canto of the Mahabharata, known as the Bhishma Parva, which altogether contains 117 chapters. Initially, Vyasa wrote the 8,800 core verses of the Mahabharata, and later his disciples, Vaishampayana and Sutta, added further historical details until the Mahabharata finally consisted of 100,000 verses, 7 times the size of Homer's Iliad and 15 times the size of the King James Bible. The word Mahabharata means the history of Greater India, and recounts the story of 2 feuding royal families, the Pandavas, the sons of Pandu, and their cousins, the Kauravas, the sons of Dhritarashtra. Both Pandu and his brother, Dhritarashtra, belonged to the royal Kuru dynasty of Hastinapur, modern-day Delhi. Although Dhritarashtra was the elder of the two, he was born blind, and so the throne was passed on to Pandu, who became the heir apparent. However, Pandu died untimely, leaving 5 children, Yudhishthir, Arjuna, Bhima, Nakula, and Sahadev. While the Pandavas were still young, their uncle Dhritarashtra assumed the throne as regent until they were of age to rule the kingdom. Yet due to his excessive paternal attachment, Dhritarashtra schemed that his own sons, led by the corrupt Duryodhana, would ascend the imperial throne. To this end, and with the consent of his father, Duryodhana made several assassination attempts upon the lives of the Pandavas. Despite the wise counsel of his grandfather Bhishma, his uncle Vidura, and his military teacher Drona, Duryodhana continued to plot against his cousins. Yet due to the protection of Sri Krishna, the Pandavas were able to foil all his murderous attempts. Historically speaking, Sri Krishna was the nephew of Pandu's wife, Queen Kunti, and was thus the cousin of the Pandavas. However, Krishna was not simply a royal prince, but the Supreme Person himself, who had descended to earth to perform his pastimes and to establish the principles of Dharma. Due to their righteous behavior, Sri Krishna always favored the Pandavas. After numerous failed murder attempts, Duryodhana finally challenged the Pandavas to a rigged game of dice. Duryodhana cheated and won the game, and the Pandavas lost their kingdom. The result was that the Pandavas were forced into exile for 13 years. After completing their 13 years of exile, the Pandavas returned to the capital and requested Duryodhana to return their rightful kingdom. When the proud Duryodhana flatly refused, they requested him to at least give them 5 villages to rule over. At this, Duryodhana curtly remarked that he would not even give them enough land in which to drive a pin. Although the Pandavas sent Sri Krishna as an ambassador to sue for peace, Duryodhana blatantly refused to listen. War was now inevitable. Rulers, as far west as Syria and as far east as China, came to take part in the battle, some supporting the Kauravas due to their political designs, and others favoring the Pandavas due to their piety. During this fratricidal war, Krishna stated that he would not take up arms for either side, but accepted the position as Arjuna's charioteer. Thus, in the month of December, in 3138 BCE, both armies assembled on the plains of the holy place known as Kurukshetra. The significance of Kurukshetra is related in the Vamana Purana, that narrates how the virtuous king Kuru, the ancestral patriarch of the Pandava and Kaurava dynasty, performed rigorous austerities at Kurukshetra. Because of this act, Kuru was given 2 blessings. Firstly, that Kurukshetra would be named after Kuru, and secondly, that anyone who died at Kurukshetra would attain the celestial planets. The Bhagavad-gita is spoken on the first day of the war at Kurukshetra. As the 2 armies prepare to fight, the blind Dhritarashtra sits in his court with his faithful servant Sanjaya, and inquires from him as to what the virtuous Pandavas are doing. Sanjaya, a disciple of the great sage Vyas, had been blessed with the mystic power to observe the conflict far from the battlefield at the palace in Hastinapur. Sanjaya then narrates to the old emperor the sacred conversation between Sri Krishna and Arjuna. Thus, the Bhagavad-gita was received by Sanjaya and repeated to Dhritarashtra for the spiritual benefit of all humanity. Swami B.G Giri. Mangalacarana. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I offer my obeisance unto my spiritual master who has opened my darkened eyes that were blinded by ignorance with the torchlight of spiritual knowledge. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamayam Dadati Sva Padantikam. When will Rupa Goswami, who has established within this world the mission to fulfill the desires of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, give me shelter at his feet? Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. I offer my respects unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master and to all the other preceptors on the path of devotional service. I offer my respects unto all the Vaishnavas and unto the 6 Goswamis, including Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Jiva Goswami, and their associates. I offer my respects unto Advaita Acharya, Nityananda Prabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and all his devotees headed by Srivas Thakur. I then offer my respects unto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, Srimati Radharani, and all the gopis headed by Lalita and Vishaka. Nama Shreshtam Manamapi Shachiputram Atra Svrupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupurim Maturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivara Mahoradika Madhava Sham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurun Tam Natosmi. I bow to the lotus feet of my spiritual master, by whose mercy I have obtained the supreme name of Krishna, the service of the son of Shachimata, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the association of Swarup Damodar, Rupa Goswami and his elder brother Sanatan Goswami, the supreme abode of Mathura, the blissful abode of Vrindavan, the divine Radha Kunda, the best of hills, Govardhan, and the desire within my heart for loving service to Radha and Krishna. Nama Om Vishnupadhaya, Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale, Swami Shri Bhaktivedanta, Prabhupadaya Te Namaha, Guru Vagyam Shirashidharyam, Shaktavesha Swarupine, Hari Krishneti Mantrena, Paschatya Prachatarine. Vishvacharya Pravarhyaya, Divya Karunya Murtaye, Shri Bhagavata Madhurya, Gita Jnana Pradayine. Gaura Shri Rupa Siddhanta, Saraswati Nishevine, Radha Krishna Padamboja, Bringaya Guruve Namaha. I offer my respects unto Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is very dear to Sri Krishna, having taken shelter at his lotus feet. Taking the order of his guru upon his head, he was empowered by Sri Nityananda and distributed the name of Krishna all over the Western world, delivering and uplifting all fallen souls. He is the best of millions of Jagat Gurus, because he is the personification of divine mercy. He has distributed the sweet nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam and the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad-gita all over the world. He is constantly engaged in the exclusive service to his guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Rupa Goswami, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I offer my humble obeisances unto Srila Prabhupada, who is like a bumblebee, always tasting the nectar of the lotus feet of Radha Govinda. Vairagya Vidya Nijabhakti Yoga, Apayayam Mam, Anavishum Andam, Shri Sridhara Bhakti Rakshakanama, Kripam Budhir Yastamaham Prapadye. I surrender unto Bhakti Rakshak Shridadev Goswami, who is an ocean of mercy. Although I was blind and in the darkness of ignorance, he gave me the light of transcendental knowledge. He taught me the real meaning of detachment and made me drink the highest nectar of divine love. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha, kripa sindubhya evacha, patitanam pavanebhyo, vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I bow before the Vaishnavas who are like desire trees and are like an ocean of mercy as they deliver the fallen souls from material existence. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Nityanando Sahodito, Gaudadaye Pushpavanto, Chitro Sandho Tamonudo. I offer my respects unto Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Nityananda Prabhu, who are like the sun and the moon, rising simultaneously in Gauda. They destroy the darkness of ignorance and bestow their wonderful blessings on all. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate, Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya, Namne Gaura Tvishe Nama. I offer my most humble respects unto Sri Krishna, who has appeared in the most merciful golden form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya in order to distribute Krishna Prema. Srila Dini Svarupaya Gauranga Suridhaya Cha, Bhakta Shakti Pradhanaya, Gadadhara Namostute. I offer my respects unto Gadadhar Pandit, who is the personification of the Ladini Shakti, the dearest associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the bestower of spiritual strength to the devotees. Panchatattvamakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam, Bhaktavataram Bhaktyākyam, Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. I offer my respects unto Sri Krishna, who is none different from his features as a devotee, devotional avatar, devotional manifestation, pure devotee, and devotional energy. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandhu Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namostute. O Krishna, you are an ocean of mercy, you are the friend of the distressed and the master of the universe. You are the master of the cowherd men, the lover of the gopis of Vrindavan, and the beloved of Srimati Radharani. I offer my respects unto you. Jayatam Surato Pangor Mama Mandamate Gati, Matsarvasva Padam Bhojo Radha Madana Mohano. All glories unto the most merciful Radha Madana Mohana. I am weak and foolish, yet their lotus feet are everything to me. Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumada, Shrimad Ratnaghara Simhasanasto, Shrimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prashtalibhi Sevyamano Smarami. In a temple of jewels in the forest of Vrindavan, under a desire tree, Radha Govinda sit upon a jeweled throne and are served by their most confidential associates. I offer my respects unto them. Shriman Rasa Rasarambhi Vamshivata Tatashtita Karshan Vena Svaner Gopir Gopinata Shriyastunaha. Sri Gopinath, who created the divine mellow of the Rasa dance, stands on the shore of Vamshivat, attracting the attention of the gopis with the sound of his flute. May Radha Gopinath shower their blessings upon us. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. I offer my respects to Radharani, whose bodily hue is like molten gold. She is the queen of the Vrindavan forest, the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, and most dear to Sri Krishna. Vrindayai Tulsidevyai Priyayai Keshavaschacha Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha. I offer repeated respects unto Vrinda, Tulsi Devi, who is very dear to Keshava, Krishna. O Goddess, you bestow bhakti to Krishna and possess the highest truth. Ugram Viram Mahavishnum Jvalantam Sarvatomukam Narasimham Bhishanam Badram Mrityo Mrityam Namamyaham. I offer my respects unto Sri Narasingha, who is ferocious, heroic, and non-different from Mahavishnu. He is fiery and his face pervades all directions. He is the half-man, half-lion avatar, who is extremely frightening. He is most auspicious, and he is the death of death itself. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Jai Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.